just a word of prayer. God, thank you for the time to be together this morning, to be in your light and your love and your word. Ask for your blessing upon us as we just get to know each other a little bit and take some first steps here, and are beginning to just become aware of who you are and what you're doing in our lives. Bless us, Lord, and keep us in these conversations and help us grow together. In Jesus' name, amen. So I thought we could just introduce our names. So I always like to do something stupid with it. So let's do your name, a little bit about your background, like what brought you here, whatever you think is important for us to know, and your favorite soup. Okay. So I'll start with my favorite soup. My favorite soup kind of changes over time, but of late it's been miso soup, like Japanese soup. I just love it. I don't know why, but it's really good stuff. My wife makes a really good tom kha gai soup though, which is a Thai type of soup. My own journey here is kind of weird. I shared a little bit of it at the youth gathering last week that Delilah was part of. But I wasn't raised in church. I was actually raised completely outside the faith. I remember when we left church because it was a shouting match between my mom and a Sunday school teacher as she was picking my brother up from a classroom. I was already in tow, like she picked me up. And they got into some big fight about something, and I don't know what that something was, but I do know we never went back to church. And by the time I got to late elementary school, my mom was aggressively anti-Christian. Like anything else was okay. And this was the 70s, so there was lots of other stuff on offer. I later came to believe in God, generically speaking, in college because of something we read in one of my English classes. And after that, it was a lot of reading for the next 5 years until finally I made a decision. I needed to at least study Christianity, even if it was just to get rid of it. It's kind of the last prejudice remaining, the last respectable prejudice. I'm going to close this door. Bottom line was that I started studying the evidence for the resurrection, found out that it was pretty good, much better than I ever expected. And that led me over the course of reading about 30 books to become a Christian. And since then, it's been an interesting journey from aggressively anti-Christian to on staff at a church to pastor. It's been a long journey since fall of 1988. That's when I first had that realization that God existed. So that's a little bit about my journey. So there's no weird question because there's nothing here that wasn't completely new to me at some point. I'll go to start on the side of the table.
Heidi. So I was also not raised with any religion in my life. I remember as a young child going to Sunday school at my grandparents' church, and that's the majority of the religion in my life. So I came to this church through a friend and through a homeschool program that I put my daughter in when I pulled her out of school 2 years ago. 2 years ago? About 2 years ago. And so because I wasn't raised with any religion, my children weren't, and I regret that a lot. My husband's Jewish, and he was adopted and then also raised in the Jewish religion. So he had a lot more religion in his life than I did. So we, observed the major holidays of both religions. And now I'm here, and I'm glad that I'm here. My favorite soup is, I'm thinking, I guess a really good French onion soup, but it has to be a really good one. So, with real Gruyere cheese and things like that.
That's nice. A good French. Now, is that a homemade French onion soup? You have a special recipe?
No, I do not make it homemade at all.
You don't make it homemade. Okay. Okay.
What's your favorite soup?
Delilah, and my favorite soup is butternut squash.
Butternut squash.
What? You done?
That's enough, she says.
That was short, sweet.
Two?
I'll see you later. You're going to lock up?
I will.
All right.
And let everyone in the social hall know if anyone wants to join us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bless you.
My name's Harold. I've been Lutheran all my life. Went to Sunday school, baptized, communion, confirmation, everything. I belong basically to one Lutheran church, Christ Lutheran Church in Rosedale, Queens, throughout my life. When I got married, my wife was Catholic, and she wanted to bring the children up in the Catholic faith, although she wasn't religious and didn't go to church. So I sort of drifted away from my church. And also because of moving, we had moved out of Rosedale. I lived there growing up, but after 30 years, we left that. And I decided I wanted to come back and come through, follow through with my religion. My current wife is, she's Catholic also, but she wants to make the change over here and enjoys this church very much. Just couldn't be here today, unfortunately. And my daughter, they were all Catholic actually, because I don't know, it seems to tend to go towards the wife's side, I guess. Whatever religion they are, I don't know. That's how it's always been in my family. And I wanted to get back to church. I always enjoyed church when I was younger. I loved church, and it was great every Sunday. Sunday school, learned a lot, had a lot of fun, met a lot of nice people. Civilized people that are in the world, as opposed to what's in this world now. Not too many. That's it. I love coming here. I love the people here. I love the pastor and the deacon, and feel very comfortable here. And my favorite soup is probably beef barley.
Yeah.
And if you ever want the best beef barley ever made, there's a steakhouse up in Old Forge, New York, where they do a lot of snowmobiling, because I used to snowmobile a lot.
Okay.
And that place has to die for beef barley soup.
That's
It's got to
awesome.
be the best I ever tasted in my life. It is delicious.
That's great.
But no, I don't make it. I'll get the Progresso in a can. Unfortunately, that's not.
Yeah. It's not the same, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes around here, some of the diners or restaurants will have beef barley soup, and it's pretty good. But not too often. They usually make some funky stuff.
Cool. All right.
My name's Will. I was brought up Catholic, and my family was we were pretty religious and went every Sunday, and
Okay.
got through communion, confirmation, everything there. But in the last after I got through high school and stuff, and was in college, we kind of made the transition with a lot of the stuff that was happening in the Catholic Church with all the priest stuff and the kids and everything. We just I don't know, felt detached from it kind of, and that there's so much injustice going on there, and it was kind of swept under the rug that kind of put a divide in it.
Yeah.
So we started getting into, with my family, I got into some Lutheran church. I was going to Faith Lutheran, the Missouri sector one.
Yeah.
In Forks for a little bit.
Yeah.
But then they had a big transition of pastors and stuff there, so it became a little scattered. So, and then in COVID time, kind of got away from it for a bit.
Oh, sure.
So we ended up coming back here, me, Kyle, and a couple other guys.
Cool. With the baptism?
Friend Brandon had his son baptized here. We were all the godfathers. So, yeah.
I've never had so many godfathers. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah, we enjoyed the sermon that day, and we really liked when we started too. With the band was really nice, and and
The band
Pastor
still
Brett
exists.
Sheridan.
It's just they're getting under the new management now.
Yeah.
You need to practice
So-
a little bit together,
So between all that, we like the vibes here, and all the people are really nice and everything. So hoping to also learn. I was brought up Catholic, so that's kind of how I feel I think of things in terms. So I'd like to learn
Sure.
the distinctions and what the Lutheran Church is all about.
Yeah.
And my favorite soup is probably lobster bisque.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah.
Bex has a good one.
No, I have never had it up there.
Yeah, it's probably the best one I've ever
What's it
had.
called? Bex?
Bex,
Is it a restaurant?
seafood, and it's in Bushkill Township,
Okay.
right past the elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that little church there is one of our predecessor churches.
Oh yeah.
The building that's why the cemetery says Holy Cross Cemetery. We moved out of that building in '74. Us and another church, they came together, bought this property, and sold that to another church, but they kept the cemetery. We still administrate the cemetery. So, yeah.
I like that cemetery.
Yeah. My kids mow it every summer. They're like, Dad, it's kind of cool to be out there.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
I'm Kyle.
I was raised Lutheran, went to Sunday school every day, or not every day, every week. Growing up was confirmed, but it was kind of forced down my throat as a kid. And I wasn't really about it. And then we'd go to confirmation class every Wednesday, and one year it fell on Halloween, trick or treat, and my birthday, and my mom still made me go. So yeah, I got pretty annoyed.
I hear you.
So
Yeah,
then
yeah,
after that, I got confirmed, and I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Sure.
So and then we came back here with the baptism and everything, and I figured that 15 years was long enough to hold a grudge. So just kind of, I don't know. Yeah, we liked the environment and your sermon and everything. It just kind of felt good to be back, so just came back.
Cool.
Favorite soup? I don't know. Ham and bean, lobster bisque. I'm a big soup dude, but if it's in front of me, I'll eat it.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you. And you? We're doing our name, kind of how we got here, and our favorite soup.
Okay. I'm Barbara Smith. I was born and raised in Danielsville, West Scenic Drive, and we always went to Sunday school and then got confirmed, baptized. I don't remember that, and then confirmed. And I was with that church for a long time. I was on consistory and did a lot with the
Consistory. Was it a UCC church?
Yeah, it wasn't when in the beginning years ago it was Lutheran one week and Reformed the next. So you didn't have to go to church every Sunday if you don't want to.
Only one pastor knew.
But then they argued with each other, so the Lutherans all left and built a church, and then we became United Church of Christ.
Okay.
And the favorite soup, I guess, probably potato.
Okay. Cool. That's good. Well, today we're just gonna get briefly started on some of this. Just talk about like the kind of people we're looking for here, and you probably got an inkling of it from my sermon. Any kind of people with our different histories, and we're all really different around here, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's a really eclectic kind of place. Deacon Michael. So one time, I mean, he was a fighter in his youth. He's still at 70 years old. I don't want to mess with this guy. He moved 8,000 pound of brick the other day, manually. He's a tough guy. He physically threatened a pastor for inviting him to Bible study. Literally grabbed him by the lapels and pulled him across the desk and held him here and yelled at him. It's been a long journey for him from that to getting up and preaching like he did last Sunday. You know what I mean? We'll talk more about this towards the end of the class, but my own journey coming in, I've been very appreciative of all the different experiences and the mentors I've had. And so to be Lutheran is first and foremost to be Catholic, okay, but not Roman Catholic. The word Catholic means universal. It's where it comes from. It's katahalas. It's the Greek just means with the whole. So you Lutherans look at Roman Catholicism and go, well, it's almost like an oxymoron. How can it be Roman and universal? Like universal is universal, okay, But there's a lot of gifts from that tradition. It's a long tradition. There's a lot of good stuff. There's also dysfunction, as your family experienced, right? As unfortunately a lot of families have experienced. Lutheranism's got its black marks too. I was so glad to have your dad along last week, Delilah, and that he felt comfortable was really great to me, because there's a mixed history with Lutherans and Judaism. Early on in his career, Luther was like very pro-Jewish. Towards the end of his career, not so much. And then the Nazis came along 400 years later and made a lot of his later career stuff that he said. But I look at Christianity as a fulfilled Judaism. We're just not waiting for the Messiah anymore. He showed up. Catholic because it's universal, but also because there's great things from the Catholic tradition. And one of my great mentors in life was a Roman Catholic priest who worked directly for Benedict. Like, he was supposed to preach my ordination and he disappeared. Now, Bernie was a heck of a guy. I can't even tell you some of the stories about him because they don't fit in church. But Bernie was the kind of guy who wouldn't wouldn't play nice in the politics. He just shot his mouth off and said what he thought was true and right. He was actually just an old Nova Scotian Fisher, excuse me. And he was straight from the hip. You never had to guess what Bernie was thinking. And we kept telling him, if you keep talking like this, the Vatican KGB is going to abduct you. You're going to disappear. And sure enough, I went to call him to preach my ordination. We'd made arrangements in December. I called him in February, said, I got my date, I got my place, only he wasn't there. And his office was empty and there was no forwarding address. We're like, we were joking, but maybe not. And it turned out he actually went to work for Benedict in Rome when the transition with John Paul II was happening. When John Paul II was dying, they were putting together whatever the transition team was going to be, and he became part of it. So I had him as a great mentor. He had 2 PhDs. Who gets 2 PhDs? You know what I'm saying? So I had a great mentor in him. Then I had an Orthodox priest who was my spiritual director for 15 years. And then I'm in a prayer order called the Society of Holy Trinity, where I've learned Lutheranism from really good Lutheran pastors, some of whom are Missouri Synod, and some of whom are, in other church bodies, but we're all Lutherans, so we've really learned that together. So I really value those different inputs, and that approach, that really colors my way of being Lutheran. And we'll be talking more about that in the coming couple of weeks. But since I had to run in here without getting ready for any of this, there's a short video. I'm just going to step out of the room while it plays so I can get some papers for you guys and some pencils, because this room was equipped for the little kids. But I don't think you want to do it in these. You don't be filling out forms with these kind of pens. So I will be right back as this plays. Here you go.
Kids, wake up, it's Sunday, we're getting ready for church. Ryan, wake up, honey. Ryan, get up. Okay, I'm gonna hop in the shower real quick, you get the kids ready, and then we'll get going.
No, hey, you just lay out their clothes, because it takes me 5 minutes.
Honey, seriously.
Well, we're already late for church.
Hey, Brian?
Step dressed.
Did you pick up my stuff from the dry cleaners?
Okay, Jack, I'm gonna make you waffles.
Can I have a sandwich?
Yes, but you gotta make it by yourself. Jack. Okay.
This is all I can find, and the zipper's broken.
Alright, I'll go grab a safety pin.
I have the high school!
Anna, what are you doing?
Daddy, I'm painting your fingernails.
Oh, that's great, sweetie. Go get dressed.
I need you to stay still. Okay, honey.
Come on, let's go.
Okay, everybody needs to eat. Here you go. Here you go. Okay, here you go.
I forgot my shoes.
Honey, we gotta go.
No.
I want to take off my shoes.
Nobody's taking off their shoes. And I want everybody to understand it. Why?
We made it.
Yep.
welcome to the family if you don't feel like you have it all together. I love that video. I play it every time we do a member class, and I love it. Yeah, we were in that place at one point. My wife was rushing because my wife always has to get the kids to, when they were little, she has to do it by herself because I'm at the church by like 5, right? And she's bringing the kids into church, and she realizes that one of my kids has, I think, 2 left shoes on. And and she said, at that moment, I had to decide whether I was going to be the perfect pastor's wife or I was going to laugh at myself and be okay with all that. So that she opted for the second thing, and it was a good fit then. What we're going to be doing today is just talking about your own personal spiritual journey a little bit. This is, or I should not say we're not talking about it. We're going to let you guys think about it on your own. This is an exercise I learned from a pastor who's a great mentor of mine, Brian Hughes. I hope our church can get as spiritually lively as his church is, or was before he retired. Amazing guy who led a church from sort of asleep at the wheel to people really walking with God and having that sense in their lives, and even seeing things like miraculous healings and crazy stuff going on. When the bishop came down to give him the what for, because they weren't going along with some of the progressive stuff, they prayed for his cancer and it disappeared. And then the bishop was going, what am I supposed to do now? Like, how to deal with that? This is an exercise. So I'm going to just ask you to take a piece of paper and a pencil if you want one and pass it along. You're not going to finish it in class today. I'm just going to kind of walk you through. This is a way of thinking about our journey because, thank you so much, Dave. Sure. Diane, put her over there. That's all right. Thank you so much. The fact is, if you're here, God's already been active in your life, but we don't always know how or why. So, I didn't believe in God till my freshman year of college, but I'd already had an experience of God, that the moment that belief was kind of there, once a book opened up my eyes to it, I was able to process an experience I'd never been able to process before. So my junior year of high school, we had a snow day. And it was one of those snow days where it came in thick and fast the night before. And so they canceled school the night before, so you didn't have to set your alarm the next day. It was like the best kind of snow days to get. And I grew up surrounded by a 500-acre farm. I wasn't a farmer, but I was surrounded by it, and we've always played on the farm. Mr. Plows led us back in the days before lawsuits when kids broke their legs. It's like, play on the farm, I don't care. And I was like, instead of sleeping in, I decided to set my alarm early and get up and just take a walk before all the snowmobiles wrecked the snow. You know what I'm saying? Because I like snowmobiling too, but all my friends did it, so I knew that pretty soon it'd be wrecked. So I decided to take a walk through the woods, and it was so quiet. No, there's no cars, no planes in the air. It was so quiet I could hear the snowfall. It's never been that quiet in my life before. And as I was walking through the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that if I could turn around fast enough, I could catch a glimpse of God out of the corner of my eye. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what does that even mean? I don't believe in God, but why do I have this feeling? And I was able to process that much later, and even look back further in my life and see ways that God was active in my life before I came to this full realization and embracing of faith. So this spiritual autobiography or spiritual geography, we call this. We just use some analogies to think about ways that God's active in our lives. So think of God as in this exercise, think of God as like the magma under the earth. You don't see it, but it's there and it's making everything roll along. Okay. And the first experience, so on your paper, I'm going to draw up here. If you want to play along with this game, you can picture the first part of our journey we're going to talk about is a mountain climb. Okay. So we've all had these experiences where we felt like we were kind of coasting, where just everything was working. You were in the flow, as I'm not gonna be able to say this guy's name right because it's Czechoslovakian, but it's like 30 letters long and 2 vowels. But it's like Sinjek Mihalik or something like this. But he wrote a whole book called Flow, which was studying peak experiences of human beings. Basically, where you're like God's lifting you up, like you're climbing the mountain and everything seems to be going right and life is coming together for you. So that's kind of the first part of the journey. And you refer to that as election. This experience of unmerited grace. Now, if we do a Bible study of the book of Romans, election will mean something a little bit different. But we've all had an experience of like where things are just going right and we're not even sure why. It's not like it's not because of my great planning or anything. Everything's just working. So I encourage you to do, if you want to play along with this, is just draw a little line up like that on your paper and write election under it. And then maybe jot some experiences that fit in that for you. For me, I became a Christian in October of 95. I was on staff at a church by May of 96. And a year later, my youth group had grown from 2 kids on a Sunday night to 60. And it's like, not because I knew what I was doing. Definitely not. Okay? It was God showing like that this is what he wanted me to be doing in my life. And it really blessed those kids too, even to the point where now they're all in their 40s. They stay in touch on youth group, on Facebook, my youth group from that time. So maybe jot some ideas like down for yourself, like maybe sometimes you've seen God working in your life in that way. If you got some. You're not going to show this to anybody. This is for you. In fact, as you travel along, as you're thinking about these times, you might even feel like you weren't even in control, like I just shared, where it's more like you're being lifted up the mountain. It's not even like you're climbing.
Why is it called election?
Because you're experiencing like a benefit that isn't really coming from you.
Okay.
You're being swept along by the experience. So it feels like an experience of what we Lutherans talk a lot about grace. It's this experience of grace where not my good planning, not my whatever. It just like things are falling into place for me. If you ever played sports, occasionally you have a game where everything's right on. Like you don't even have to. You can like shoot the basket and turn away because you know it's going in. It's a moment like that. It's like times like that in your life. Okay. The next stage of things. And again, you can think more about this, or you probably will think more about this over the week ahead. And you might come up with other experiences, but this is just to kind of, I want to get you guys out by noon and honor that. Other weeks will be easier because we don't have, this is the long communion. It's all around the altar. The service always runs long, first Sunday of the month. The next one is kind of the opposite, where you feel like you're being broken down. Like everything's tumbling down around you. And it's as unpleasant as the experience is, at times you look back on those and you're like, I absolutely needed that. I needed that experience to break this part of me down. If you've ever, guy movies, right? The hero of a guy movie is always the drill sergeant. It's always the guy who appears to be kicking your butt and taking you down a peg, but is actually building you up. And it's that kind of experience. We refer to that as erosion, or Bremen refers to that as erosion. But places where God has been tearing things down in your life that needed tearing down, or teaching you a lesson by tearing something down. Maybe it didn't need to be torn down, but you experienced that. I can't tell you over the years that I've done this how many people have put their divorce in that category. Everything was falling apart, but they needed to learn something from it. Or in worst case scenario, it was actually a toxic relationship that needed to end, an abusive relationship or something like that. But erosion, where everything's falling apart in our lives. So you might be able to come up with some things that happened that you can remember like that. It was like a mudslide, everything falling apart, whether you wanted it to or not.
Is that the part where that saying comes in, that God won't give you more than you can handle?
Maybe. That is a saying. It's important to know it's not a biblical saying.
No, I know.
But yeah.
It's a man-made saying.
It is. But it comes out of a lot of people's experience, right? That
Right.
they get through something they didn't think they could get through. And so they can
just keep
look back
and
and talk
after a
about
while, it's like you say, "Oh, how much more can I handle?" You know what I mean? And then everybody turns around and will tell you, "Well, God won't give you any more than you can handle." So.
Yeah, I always think that comes. I think that's where the Book of Job comes from, and that's actually the oldest book in the Bible in terms of when it was written down. Not the oldest stories in the Bible, but it's the oldest book in the Bible. So people have been struggling with suffering and why God allows it for a long time. So I definitely had experiences like this several times in my life. And each time I thought, boy, that really sucked. I never have to go through that again. Then the next one's worse. So you learn. I'm going to apologize to the people who are watching this on recording. I keep forgetting. I keep walking forward towards you guys, and then they're like seeing from here down on me on the camera. So I'll forget again. So I apologize again. The next one is eruption. Where just out of nowhere something explodes into your life you didn't expect. A lot of people over the years, if divorce shows here, falling in love falls here. A lot of times, because it wasn't the plan. You didn't go out on that date because you planned to marry the girl or the guy. It just so happened that way. It was on a lark.
Is eruption good or bad, or either?
It could be both. It can definitely be both. Not necessarily one or the other. It's just an unexpected change of plans that in your life has been formative too, because it's helped bring you here today. Even though it might have been a truly negative experience. I had a terrible experience with a church a couple of years ago, about 7 years ago. Terrible experience with a church. And it felt like not only the wind was taken out of my sails, it felt like getting winded if you've ever fallen off of something, landed flat on your back, and you can't breathe in. I spent 8 months going through adrenaline withdrawal. I mean, literally shakes from dealing with the conflict and from dealing with the stress that led up to it. But it taught me to be a much better, more faithful, more centered pastor, which I didn't have that. I didn't realize I wasn't. I didn't realize I needed to grow from it. There was genuine evil that went on in that, including false accusations, not not so much of me. That was kind of whispered down the lane. Once I quit, they're like, oh, there must have been a reason why he quit. But it was more about other people in the congregation. It was horrible. It was vile. So that was definitely an eruption of a kind. Just like going into my freshman English class to discover the existence of God was an eruption. Like, it was definitely not the point of the book I was reading. And definitely not the point of the professor who was teaching it. But it was an eruption. It changed things radically, just like a volcano would change the landscape. And the one eruption that occurs again and again in our Christian life, as you heard in my sermon today, is the cross. No matter how many times we hear that news, we will tend to fall back into ways of thinking that make it all about us and our effort. And to hear that it was all about what God did is the thing we need again and again. It's our pattern interrupt. Psychologists talk about if you want to establish a new pattern, you need to get a pattern interrupt. Whatever you're doing currently needs to be stopped. And this is part of how God does this. That the news of what he has done, not what we have done, changes things over and over again. And it's the early church called the cross the pivot point around which the world returns. All of history rotates around it. And it's been amazing in my lifetime to see a lot of secular people agreeing with that thesis. People who don't have a committed Christian faith, but they're like, yeah, Christianity changed the world. And Christianity was born out of the cross experience. It was not born, the cross and resurrection. It wasn't born out of Jesus' teachings because Jesus didn't teach anything new. He only taught what was already in the Old Testament. So the last stage of things, the last one for maybe to think about is excavation. Okay, this is a time when God put you to work, digging into something. Not that he abandoned you in the digging, but you were going to be an active part of what's going on. In these experiences, you may have nothing to do with it. I had nothing to do with the growth of my youth group in Michigan. I had nothing to do with God taking me to pieces in that church experience or in seminary. I had nothing to do with the eruptions that have exploded into my life, the unexpected diagnoses and things like this. Excavation's kind of different. I've had an awful lot to do with excavation. God wants me on board working on something. I'm the adult child of an alcoholic, as a for instance. My wife defines my 40s. She said, your whole 40s was about figuring out what it means, how that impacted you, and you didn't even realize it.
So out of the four of these, excavation is kind of the only one that you're saying that anybody has any control over, really?
Yeah.
Kind of what your role in it is? Yeah,
for lack of a better word, you're cooperating with God in this one. In the other experiences, God's not the author of evil. Scripture is really clear about that. But he allows bad things to happen that good things may come out of them. So both of these erosion and eruption in particular may involve bad stuff going on. But it's going to be part of your whole story that God's going to use for good, especially when you understand it in light of the cross. Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purposes. Doesn't mean all things are good. It means that if you're listening to God, if you're called according to his purpose, they work for good in your life, even objectively crappy things. And like I said, I think I mentioned this on the youth weekend last weekend. The one that blew my mind was when I heard a woman talk about how that her full recovery from her rape only happened when she learned to be grateful for it and see it as something that God used to create in her something that wasn't there before. And I thought, I don't know that I could go to that place, but she did. And that was amazing to me. But excavation is always for the purpose of uncovering a diamond, to learn something. God's putting you to work to help develop in you strengths, skills, insights that you couldn't have without participation in the process. So when my kids were really little, We taught them. We started teaching them cooking really young. My son leaves for college in the fall, and he's decided he's going to learn to cook all things Japanese. That's what he's going to cook when he's trying to learn how to cook everything in a hot pot in his dorm, so he can cook for his friends when he gets there. But it started when they were little, and we would every Friday night at our house at that time. Now it's Wednesday nights. We would do pancakes and bacon, chocolate chip pancakes and bacon, and we didn't work from a mix. We started with this many scoops of flour and this many scoops of sugar and your baking powder and all that stuff and put it all together. And of course, how many handfuls of chocolate chips, which my kids always added more, and stuff like this. Well, it wasn't because I needed help making pancakes. It's because I wanted them to learn how to make pancakes. So excavation is kind of that part of our spiritual journey. But in all these things, we can see ways that God is working in our lives or allowing our life to be worked on that's brought us here and now. And as I'm going to talk about next week, this whole pattern is reflected in Scripture. God's story is no different than ours. God puts himself through what we go through. And that's not surprising because we're made in his image. So just this week is just to get you thinking more intentionally and actively about your own spiritual journey and where it's led and what brought you here. Next week, we're going to start getting in earnest into the distinctives of like what we believe generally as Christians, because even people raised in church, I have found, often don't know. We get a lot of weird stories. You heard that in my sermon today a little bit. I go to other churches and I feel like, when's the sermon going to start? Not because what they're teaching is bad. It's just its focus is in the wrong place. There's a lot of churches that talk an awful lot. The pastor will spend 80% of their sermon on how to fix what I should be doing on this stage of things. But this is only one part of what's going on. Without this other stuff, we don't even have the power or interest in changing that stuff. I mean, even when we get to here, it's cooperating with God. It's not me do it so I can prove something to God. So we're going to talk a lot about that in the coming weeks, because everything I'm trying to do as a pastor of this church is to empower people to grow in their walk with God. I'm notorious. I always tell people, tell people about your pastor who forgets to take an offering, because I will do that. If I don't have it written or if it doesn't show up on the PowerPoint, I will never remember to take an offering, because all I'm focused on is giving stuff to people so they can help grow in their spiritual journey. And I'm like, oh, we got to keep the bills on, to pay the bills or whatever. I forget those things. This is my focus because it's been the core of my growth. I'm not interested in the church as an institution. Got me in trouble with one of the churches I served because they were very big into their history. And I looked at them and said, we've been here for 275 years. The only reason we're going to be here for 276 is if we keep doing God's work, because otherwise he will raise up a better church next door and everyone will move over there, and that's the way it should be. I don't care about the institution. I think a lot of the bad stuff that happened in the Roman church, I have good friends who are Roman Catholic priests, so I'm not throwing stones, had to do with people feeling they had to protect the institution instead of live with integrity. And I think that that's the wrong way to go about the spiritual life in general, and it's specifically wrong for Christians. So my focus for all of you is going to be to help you see you grow in your faith, see you, for lack of a better word, knowing how to live it. Because Christianity becomes fun not when you learn about it. It's like be like sitting down and listening to I was a soccer player. I know all the rules of soccer because I was a ref. If I sit down and explain all the rules of soccer to somebody, they still don't know how to kick the ball, and they still don't have any fun. Soccer be like that thing, like you said, like making me come on my birthday and trick or treat. I'm done. You know what I mean? And that's not what I want for you guys. I want you guys to come alive to what God's doing, because the exciting part of being a Christian is being a Christian, not learning the Christian stuff. But we constantly reinforce it. We constantly learn it again and again, so that the cross needs to keep breaking into the middle of our reality. So each week I'm going to have one thing, again, because I forget to do paperwork. I'm going to pass this out. A little connection time here. Each week we're going to have a little connection time. An information form if you've never filled one out. This just helps us be in contact with you. So, for instance, we're in bad weather So if you give me your cell phone number, you'll get a text message if church is canceled or delayed. Stuff like that. You don't. This is not a commitment to become a member of the church. This just lets us have enough information to be in touch with you. And if you decide to become a member, it's all good. And the other thing is send a selfie to us. They don't even all the companies that have done church directories for 20 years all went out of business in the last 5 years because it's as doing a church directory as easy as this. Take a picture of yourself, send it to the secretary. Now we've got a picture of you. Now we got a church directory. So our software we work with allows us to do that. It also lets us recognize each other in church and get to know each other a little bit better. I'm hoping, supposedly the software we use, we've only been using it about 9 months. Supposedly it lets you build an online directory, so like you could see someone at church and go in there and go, who is that? Look for their name or something like that. Will allow you to like build like friend groups and stuff. Like, hey, we want to start like we used to have a ministry called Wings in the Word. It was mostly guys your age, and we would all get together at the bar and order wings and beers and talk theology for an hour or two. And it was fun. But if we want to get that going again, like you want to call a bunch of people, let's see if we can make it happen, kind of thing. So that's the purpose of these. So if you're willing to do this, I'm going to put this in here. You'll see there's the secretary's email is on there. So if you want to take a selfie and send it, or a favorite picture, you can do that.
Should I fill it out for both of us, or should she fill
That's true. You can fill it out for both of you because you're in the same family. You don't have to fill it in now. You can bring it back next week if you want to. You're welcome to. But I know some of you have appointments to get to and everything like that.
Hey, Pastor,
Yes.
I filled one of these out.
Then you're done. If we already have that info,
A while ago, yeah.
Great. Just take it and
We all did. Me, my wife, my daughter.
okay. If you want to send us some of your favorite pictures for down the road for the new member class, then just use the email on the top of that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And if you don't take selfies or send emails, we'll take your picture at the new member dinner for you. But some people prefer to like pick their favorite picture and send it, their most glamorous shot or whatever. So.
I'll have to look in my album and get one from when I was much younger.
There you go. Okay. That'll work. That'll work. There's no judgment here.
Just send the birth picture.
I actually need to do that. My headshot for me as a pastor, I think that's on our website, is probably 15 years old. I'm like, I wear reading glasses now, and I got a lot more wrinkles. In fact, my kids, you guys saw a picture of me back in college. That was sad. But my kids found a picture of me like from when they were little. I'm like, Dad, you've gotten so old. I'm like, thanks. That's awesome. I'm in this for the self-esteem, So yeah, but send us whatever picture you want. It's all good. All right. That's it for today. We're done. And I want to honor that. Again, next week we'll probably start by 11 because we'll probably be out of church by 10:30. So it still gives you time to go grab a bite to eat and bring it. You're welcome to bring food down here with you. I wasn't sure which room we would be in, but since the youth room had about 10 teens in it, it was probably better not to use that room. So they just move us down here. So we're good. Okay.
So
Thank you guys.
It'll be in this room every week?
Yeah, it'll be in this room every week unless we outgrow this room. Then I'll find another room to move us to.
So
yes,
because Eric Peterson's not here today.
Yes, I know that.
But I know he wants to be